Hey, good afternoon and welcome to Lunchtime Stories. My name is Kim Britton. My beautiful co-host for the Lunchtime Stories is my cousin from Fort Lauderdale. I never get that right. Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Lauren Britz, how are you?
I'm doing very well, Kevin. Coming to you from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. It's bright and sunny outside, and today is Labor Day in America. So most people are on the beach right now. So we're having a great time.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I'm wearing my floral shirt. I only have about 3 of them, but I'm celebrating because we also finally had some sunshine in South Africa. The planet is literally changing in front of our eyes.
It really is.
So, Lars, the candid conversations with my cousin. Like when we started having this conversation, one of the things that really stood out for both of us was, although we come from, we're family, we come from the same country. What stood out was a lot of what you were also paying attention to from some of the series is the differences that we are experiencing. And obviously you have a whole bunch of far different reference to it because you're from South Africa, you know what it's like to live here. And yet you're experiencing an American culture slightly different to what we know, and what we've grown up with. And that's where, this is all evolved from, was like, let's have like interesting, candid conversations about that, because I think that a lot of people, it's that regular old kind of assumption that we make about, oh yeah, America's got it all covered, even though they've got Trump. It's easy there. But I think one of the things that you rightfully pointed out was people are, as much as it is a first world country, and people are still frantically freaking out and scared and frustrated and insecure about the future. And so, like from your perspective, I suppose the first conversation or first question I have, how do you guys do? I mean, like, what are you experiencing from your perspective in chaos and what the chaos is like in America at the moment?
Well,
that was a big intro. I'm so sorry.
No, this is great. This is great because it's perfect. It's so true. First of all, the world has experienced something that doesn't leave any human on this planet unmoved. So, or, affected in some way on some level. What I would say is, everybody thinks America, everything's just rosy and glorious. And there's a lot of people here, there's approximately 350 million people here. Yeah. And there's a lot of people that are doing well, and there's a lot of people that are struggling. And I would say that on the middle ground to the struggling part, people don't know how to get out of the chaos. Suddenly we woke up one day and our world was just super, super chaotic. How do we, what do we use? What techniques do we use to get our minds out of that chaos? Also, one of the things that I'm not sure people are really aware of is there's an exceptional amount of information on the television. So, obviously you guys get your news, you have one local news station in South Africa, or you have a few different ones, but it sort of serves the whole of South Africa. Yeah. Here we have just so many channels of news just coming at you from different angles. And one of the very interesting differences is that we don't have news on our poles, our light poles outside, or the street poles, or any of the stop signs and that kind of stuff. Whereas I know in South Africa, you're kind of bombarded with this constant reminder of what's in the news. Yeah. A lot of people do listen to the news here. They have mainstream news just sort of coming through the TV, coming through the radio, and that can get really noisy. So one of the things I'd like to, just talk about is how do we how do we get quiet during the chaos, so that we can
Yeah.
find some answers and move forward.
Just before we get there, one of the things that I want you to also sort of just highlight is one of the conversations we had was South Africans, and we're making a gross assumption, but it is almost obvious, and I've had a few conversations with international people around. There's a certain kind of something about South Africans that sort of intrigue the world from who they are, but also sort of ingrained kind of way that we just do life at a sort of unexpected extreme, and we're so what's the word I'm looking for? We're so used to is the wrong word, but we're so used to living at the end of our comfort zone, like right pushed up, and that's what's one of the things you mentioned when we first started chatting was how South Africans really embrace change in such a way, and we're quite comfortable with it, actually.
Yes, it's definitely something that is noticeable. Obviously, we're making sort of generalizations here, but we're kind of taking cultural ideals and just sort of drawing an interesting comparison so that we can see where people can benefit from each other.
Yeah.
And I will say, I don't think people realize how young a country America is. It's a very young country. When you come here, you speak to people, and also a generalization, but most people are 1 to 2 generations into their Americanism. You meet some people and they're like, oh, my mother was born here, or they were the first person born in America. So, I think Americans are just a very young country. Move over to beautiful South Africa and Africa in general, it's just been functioning for so long. With regards to actually being there, having people around, people being born, having a culture develop over time, actually the people on the continent identifying as South African or, whatever African country they're from. So yes, South Africans do things in a way that and I don't know if they realize they have a lot more experience. I know that sounds crazy, considering all the landscapes we're looking at with regards to, governments in South Africa and even over here. But South Africa has more, they're more of an experienced, when it comes to dealing with difficult things. They've been doing it just for a longer period of time. So America is now undergoing some changes that they've never quite seen before, and there's a little bit of, oh boy, what do I do about this? What am I going to do now?
And that's why I think I want to raise that point, is because people have this they identify, and I suppose it's because of social media and the world and the news and how we learn information. They identify with America just being this forerunner in so many ways, and they kind of make that the standpoint at where they function. And yet, like you're saying, no, it's actually quite a young country, and so many people. I mean, one of the things that you also mentioned was the multiracial kind of nation that it is, that they don't identify just as Americans, or it's usually Mexican Americans, or there's some kind of attachment to it, where South Africa is just South Africa. Well, I'm just a South African.
Right. So if I think about my own genetic lineage, I'm about somewhere between 6 and 8 generations African. So Americans, if they're only 1 or 2 in, there are, of course, many or a few that are further down the line, but they are now being faced with things for the first time in many of their lives. Whether even some of the older people, younger people, they're all being faced with something they've never had to deal with before. On a societal and a governmental level, they're like, oh boy, here we go. They don't know necessarily what to do, and they're freaking out. Some of them are really freaking out. South Africans have been through so much, and it's not about comparing, oh, okay, my problem compared to yours. This is about really just saying, listen, we grew up through apartheid. We can talk about racial issues. This is something South Africa is so good at doing. Kevin, I was here for many, many, many years. And one of the things I would constantly comment on was how people of races would not talk about race, people of different races. Like, you just wouldn't get a white person talking to a black person. Even the word black was so taboo that obviously I'm like, hey, black this, black that. And everyone's like, stop saying that, And I'm like, why? Are you black or are you not black? I mean, it was like removing the emotion out of the word. Now even in America, the word is generally brown instead of black. So, it's a lot of political correctness, but if we get down to the sensitivities behind certain things, whether it's race, economics, South Africans can really offer perspective, different perspective, and practical ways to move forward in chaos.
Yeah. So, and I'm so glad that that's, part of what we're going to be touching on, because there is a unique way that, I believe that there is a unique way that we deal with chaos in a way that just gets us moving forward, irrelevant of the adversity that we're faced with. We kind of go, okay, cool, this is really bad. Like one of the things that you mentioned the other day, I was just made a note now, like load shedding. Like, people don't know what load shedding is. They like, what is load shedding? So just tell everybody about how you experienced when you spoke about load shedding. That's like absurd.
I was paging through social media, and I'd come across your show, and I was watching it, and I just started giggling, and I was sitting with my girlfriend, and I said, look at this, here they are running out on camera in their car, off they're going because electricity had just gone out. So I'm trying to explain what load shedding is, and that this is a functioning first world country, South Africa, and that is just very difficult to explain. Like, how do you not have electricity but you're all doing business? And that very unique platform is something that can show the rest of the world that it doesn't matter if you don't have something. You can go find it, you can go create it. You just have to change perspective. And South Africa's had to do that. South Africans sometimes have to do it every day. They have to, just come up with new solutions, new ways of doing things, because they run into so many obstacles.
Yeah, it speaks so much to, part of what we both very, very obviously know, because as business owners, if you're not resilient, you kind of have to like make a plan, right? And if you're not making a plan, you just get swallowed up. And I think I'm not going to call it a South African thing, but I do think South Africans do really have a way of bouncing back in such ways. I look at the Jerusalem song, that song that everyone's dancing to. And there's so many South Africans that are sort of online and sharing it, and they're doing it in their workspaces or even just on camera. It's amazing how there's, and for those who are listening in America, we have that Ubuntu kind of thing that we do, that we are one kind of thing. And although we have such strong opposing sides at the moment, I do think there's something that we still have that sort of links South Africans with South Africans, and it's sort of an unspoken special something that we carry, I think.
I'm still trying to search for the right word to describe that. Of course, Ubuntu describes it best. There's something that runs through the threads of South Africans and Africans. Even if you go to other African countries, you'll find this kind of bond with them, and it's not it's hard to explain how it even came about, really. But there's something about the Ubuntu of, I exist because you see me, and we are together in this journey, regardless of our separateness.
Yeah.
And that is something, in my opinion, that on a large scale, America will benefit from hearing about and sort of developing. One of the first things I noticed when I came here was, people just were not as together somehow. There was a lot of individuality. Everyone was very much sort of expressing themselves.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of beauty in that too. And I'd like to touch on some other time about the confidence levels and the energy that Americans can bring to the table as well. But as far as being together, Americans always relied on patriotism. But I think that leaves a lot of people out of the loop in essence, or maybe the word patriot or patriotism is changing a lot, or people have now different views on it. But we're still trying to find and develop that one string, that gold string that basically we all identify regardless, of what race we are, or ethnicity, or gender, or orientation.
Yeah. So because I know the last time we had a conversation, we ended up speaking for about an hour to just make sure that we keep it as tight as we can. The part of giving some advice is, not only from business owners' perspective, but one of the things that you do mention is how to get rid of the noise, and how to sort of cope with that as a business owner, as someone who's making a success as a leader in the world. Don't you want to run through some points and give some advice on that? Because I know your take on it is quite interesting, and I want to share some of what you're saying as well.
Yeah, I think it's pretty simple. It's time for people to look at themselves. And I think in doing so, you really change whatever you're doing, business, family, life in general. So I think in this very chaotic world where you're just bombarded with information, news, right, wrong, accurate, not accurate, whatever it is, it's important to take a few steps to save your sanity and to create space in chaos, kind of like, a whirlwind. At the eye of a storm, or even a hurricane, at the eye of the storm is absolute calmness. It's around the storm where the chaos is. So one of the things I like to say is put off the noise and put on the nature. One of the most amazing things is to go outside into nature, whether it's the ocean, a forest, on a walk, out in your back garden, buying a plant. Just go and buy yourself a plant. If you don't like to water plants and you're like, oh, I'm going to kill the plant, buy a cactus. It doesn't require much. But plants that flower are very abundant, good energy to have around you. It just brings a little bit of focus, a little bit of beauty to your life, to your eye. Takes, brightens up those gloomy days. So I do find walking, anything nature orientated, is such a good idea. Put off the news, switch off the radio, and just go for choose to do that for yourself, because it's a good idea. Sure.
I just want to emphasize that I've had the fortunate opportunity to stay in loft space before, and in the loft space that we were staying in, it's beautiful. It's loft, it's in the city. It's yay, wow, wow, wow. And the one thing that my brain kept needing, like specifically, was something green to look at. And I kept going, wow, I love the space. It's beautiful. It's amazing. Yay. But there's something wrong with the space. And the more I really self-investigated that moment, the more I kind of realized, oh, wow, I, as a person, quite specifically need nature quite close to me. So even where I stay now, I can open my door and there's trees and garden right here.
Yeah.
So I completely agree. Some people go to the point of going, take your shoes off and go walk in the grass. Go put your feet in the grass, or in the sand. And it's completely having that kind of mental, kind of physical connection to the earth. And people kind of take it for granted, until they're in that space, or they're next to the ocean, or they're in the sand, or they part of nature, just for a moment. It really does have profound, and there is some science that supports that too. But it really does make a huge difference.
Yes, it does. And I see your green plant there behind you. And
Yes.
there's a lot of people that live in cold places, very cold. And I don't know if people know, but America is mostly a cold country. If you don't live in Florida or Hawaii and some parts of California, you're going to freeze 90% of the year. You're going to get a lot of cold. So going outside can be challenging. And we're talking like brutal cold. So, where you actually can't go outside. So if you find yourself living in a concrete jungle and you can't go outside, or it's too cold, or the weather is too hot, bring your nature inside. Buy a plant, grow it, look after it. It's going to make, like you say, a massive difference. One of the next ones was literally saying goodbye and au revoir to people who suck your energy and your time.
Yeah.
This is one that is difficult for a lot of people because they feel bad, they carry a lot of guilt, but your time is so precious that you have to start guarding it and respecting it. For people to just do the best and create space to, do business and have flourishing lifestyles, you really want to kind of set up some really strong boundaries, or even separate yourself from people who are sucking your energy, taking advantage, who are not supporting you. There are different ways to do this. I'm not saying just go through your list and cut everyone off, but start exploring who's really making you work harder, or at least doing more heavy lifting than you need to. Who's sucking you dry of your emotional energy? Who's taking and not giving back as well?
Will Smith refers to it as he does a bit of a video on YouTube, and he goes, check your WhatsApp. If you go and check your WhatsApp, your list of your WhatsApp contacts, and the top 5 people, if they are not fanning your flame, you should delete them. And has always been part of my reference to it's the absolute truth. So I live by that notion, and I'm kind of going, it's very important for me as a business person to be able to do what I do, to find inspiration, to be online, to go out and want to help people, and for me to be able to do that, I kind of need people in my world to really hold me high. And if you don't, you need to leave really quickly. Leave, let me help you. I'll help you leave. I'll pack your bag, because if you're not, I'm very quickly going to get really negative, and I'm not going to stand what's going on. And it that goes to the next point that you're talking about is self-care. So in terms of that, what is your kind of way of looking at self-care?
So I think what people are starting to realize is that they are actually important. I say this with humor, but it's somewhere along the line we lost the notion that we were also important, and that we had to make everyone else important over and above us. We are important too, not more, not less, just equal. But everything starts with this right here. So mental health, physical health is going to take you far. It's going to be the vehicle that takes you through your business, that allows you good relationships, business and personal. It's going to take you, it's just going to be the crux of everything. If you're sick, you cannot succeed. So self-care, daily self-care is imperative in my books. And I'm not talking about, going to the spa every day of your life, although if you can do that, awesome.
Yay.
But, every now and then give yourself a treat, whether you have, extra money to spend, or whether you don't want to and you're saving. It doesn't matter really what your budget is. You can do something for yourself. The only thing self-care requires is that you are focused on you. Whether you're cutting your toenails, painting your toenails, giving yourself a nice pedicure, or sitting at home, giving yourself a facial, or literally just sitting in a chair, taking your morning slow, having a cup of coffee, reading your favorite book, something that fulfills you as a human being. If you don't find anything or you don't know, maybe it's just been a while. Maybe you just need to sit and think like, okay, go outside, walk on the grass, barefoot.
Yeah. One of the things that I recently did in some training was ask that very question. And we would talk about resilience. And I asked, okay, guys, take out your phones and take a selfie and look at yourself as if you're going to take a selfie, and look at the camera and tell yourself you are the most important person in the world. And when they kind of did that, I could see, because I had all of these screens on, I could see that people were kind of going, that they sort of had this frown kind of facial expression, and they kind of don't relate to it. People don't, like you're saying, people need to start realizing that they're actually important. People don't have reference to kind of going, yeah, I'm okay with me, and the quickest way to kind of pick that up is like, well, how okay are you to stand in the mirror and look at yourself every day and go, you are the most important person in the world? And if you go in the world, it's like, oh my God, the world. And it's like, yeah, the world.
Of all 7.777 billion. I would say that it may be difficult at first. Even you may not even believe yourself, but I would just do it anyway. Because you will start believing yourself. You don't have to be better than anyone else. But again, free will does not negate free will. You are allowed to be great, and so is the person next to you. And in fact, if you're both great, then you're better together. So definitely.
And also, building that awareness of it, kind of going, oh, wow, I didn't realize that I feel that way about me. And if you do, kind of go, okay, well, how do I change that? What steps can I take to actually get to the next, and the next and the next? And that leads me directly to the next one, which is focus. Like you speak about focus and how important focus is.
People like to talk about negatives and positives, and that's okay. That's how we identify and label things.
Yeah.
I do think that it's very important to keep focus on what your thoughts are. I'm not saying it's not going to be a matter of, okay, you're never going to have a negative thought again in your life. I mean, that's not really possible unless, I don't know, maybe you're a guru or something. But we're human, we're perfectly imperfect, we're allowed to think what we think. However, whatever you focus on, whatever you're thinking about most of the time is where your energy is going to be directed. It's pretty simple. It's like, if you took paint and you threw it on the wall, wherever it lands, that's where it is. But it can only land in the direction you throw it. It can't go anywhere else. It requires you to direct it. And directing your energy, if you come across a negative moment or you've had a bad day, it's okay to process that. It's not a good idea to deny it. Process it and then say, okay, how do I take this energy and turn it so that it is a better, more powerful energy to serve my business, to create amazing things? People call that positive energy. I tend not to use positive and negative because I don't want people to feel bad for feeling bad. It's okay for you to feel bad. All your feelings are fine. However, if you're going to walk around miserable all day long, you're going to be miserable all day long.
Yes.
So if you decide today, you know what, I am done being miserable. I've just had enough. Like, I'm sick of being sick. and
Yeah.
tired, then you get up, you go do something. That is now you focusing on you doing something better. And if we just stop and make that distinction and just take notice, I think it makes a fundamental difference to our lives and our businesses.
Yeah, because of all the stuff that I do, for me, it's a case of doing a lot of research and finding a lot of information. And recently I saw a neuroscientist speak about the triggers that we have. And it leads to your next point here, quite specifically about taking action. And he says what we think is we have this idea that from a neuroscientist or from a neuroscience perspective, that thought will automatically create state, which will automatically create behavior. And that's not necessarily true. And he's kind of suggesting, actually, if you know what behavior to start taking and what action to start taking and start paying attention to how successful people are doing it, start doing the action, because your brain's going to go, what the hell's going on? Like, what do you mean I should do this now? And part of you taking the action elicits the trigger for your brain to go, oh, this is what we're doing. So it's exactly, to that point where as much as you start focusing and you get caught up in the stuff that's wrong and you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, start doing the opposite of what that looks like. Start behaving it. So your brain, so you're almost interrupting that brain pattern. You're almost going, no. And that's really, which is so essential on what you're saying. So from your perspective, taking action, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, there is nothing in the world, no bad economy, no worldwide virus, nothing. There's nothing that can stop you if you take action. It's, I use my wall and my paint scenario. If I have a white wall and I want it to be pink, and I have pink paint in my hand, but I just stare at my wall all day and I don't actually put the paint on the wall, I'm never going to have a pink wall.
Yeah, whether you're having a bad day or whether there's a virus, it's like, okay, just paint the wall, like just take the action. Yeah,
exactly. And that is a distinction in the mind. It's such a existential concept, actually. Taking action's a very simple word, but it seems like such a mind-boggling thing to do. And I think that is essentially where so much magic lies. That is where the inception of all the things you want lies. Because taking action today could look like, taking your pen and taking your book and writing down your goals.
Yeah.
Even if you don't know what you want, maybe it looks like writing down, I want to go for a walk today, or I want to make $1 million in 5 years, or that it's so powerful to just, simply writing down is taking an action. Getting up and going to talk to somebody. Actually, there's something about people that talk and say the same thing, and they have a desire, and they can have the desire for years and they never do anything about it. And it's so bizarre, because why do you keep talking about it? You clearly want to do it. But something about taking the action, I don't know if it's cognitive dissonance or fear, and maybe it's different in all of us, but we seem to be afraid to actually move forward. Maybe it's, some people are afraid of their actually succeeding, their own success. So what would my life look like if I actually succeeded? But action is everything, in science, nothing exists if there's no action. And I feel like in creation, that's the same way. It's not going to go anywhere if you don't get up. Anything is an action. Standing up, dialing a number is an action. Just take one action every day and you'll slowly build your puzzle for exactly what you want. You got to get up.
As you're talking, what I'm realizing is everything you're saying, doesn't matter when you're living in the world, it still boils down to the very same principles. They're almost principles of life, Like, what are you paying attention to? Where's your focus? How are you taking action? What are you doing to keep yourself okay? How much are you focusing on how well you're doing instead of waiting for someone else to say how well you're doing? Like, there's so many similarities, and I suppose, yeah, circumstances and environment can influence that quite substantially, but to the foundation of really being out there, making business happen, speaking to people, getting from A to B, and really just and inevitably, in my head, I eventually got to a point where I was going, well, what else are you going to do? Like, what else are you just going to sit there and complain? Like, what else are you going to do? Like, you're going to just lament about it for hours and hours. And like, what else are you going to do? So is that the life you feel like choosing for the rest of your rest of your days? So for me, it's always kind of going, if I look back from when I'm 80 years old back into like my life, will I ever get to a point where I'm going, well, I'm so glad I took the action, even though I failed dismally, like, damn, I'm so sorry. Don't do that again, but yet still got up and did it and came out the other side going, well, I definitely learned a lesson there. Right.
Yeah.
So Lars, in the wrapping up of today, what is the key message that you want to just share from your perspective today?
I think the bottom line for me is take your power back. And I don't mean that in a violent, confrontational, or any sort of weird way. I just mean, don't sit today and think about who rules your life, who has say over your life, who is in your life, who is directing your life, your energy. This is your life. You are important, as is everybody else. Who is directing your life? I think we've given our power away a lot, and that's okay. We don't need to worry about why we did that. What we need to do now is sit down and really just take your power back and say, you know what? This is my energy. I was only created with so much of it for so long, and I'm going to do what I think is best. And then on top of that, try to develop yourself a beautiful, platform of integrity, so that when you are wielding your energy, you do it in a beautiful way, in a good way that helps other people and helps yourself. Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, on that note, I'm just going to add to that, where I don't know who says it now, so forgive me for getting that name wrong, but I think it's Jan van Sant or Lisa Nichols speaks quite specifically, and she says, take responsibility for the energy that you bring into this moment.
Absolutely.
And when I first heard that, I was like, oh my goodness, if people could just take a minute before you walk into that meeting, before you have that conversation, before you click that button or phone that person, just be responsible for the energy that you bring into that moment, because if you're not, it may go haywire, and then you're going to kind of go, oh, blame kind of thing. So Lars, conversations with my cousin. It's been so fun.
I love it. Thank you so much.
One of the conversations that I do that I definitely want to be having is the Black Lives Matter. I know that you have an opinion about that, and I'm curious about that because I've also seen a lot of stuff and social media, and I know where my opinion about it is. So it's definitely a conversation I want to get your insights from, but that's, definitely something we can look at next week. And also, I know that you have an opinion about, I'm not going to say, but I'm going to say you have an opinion about Donald Trump.
Yes.
and I'm really keen to hear that, because from the skewed version of what we have as South Africans, it's like, oh, wow, what the hell's America? But Lals, thanks for candid conversations with my cousin and sharing some stories with me. I really love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. I absolutely love talking to you. These are important things for us, and we really want to help people out there just sort of grab their power, yes, there are so many wonderful topics to talk about. They are tender topics: Black Lives Matter, Donald Trump, the Democratic Party. These are things that people are trying to talk about, and they're having a hard time because it's a very sensitive topic, all of them actually at this point.
Yeah.
They all have very different meanings for different places. It is not the same. One is not more important than the other. They're just different landscapes. So it would be wonderful to touch on that. And, we will have a candid conversation that's open and honest. And the goal is to offer insights and, of course, takeaways that you can use to make your business and your life better. So
absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening, and have a wonderful day in Florida. I know it's
so
a holiday, and it's sunny, so go enjoy the beach.
We're going to go enjoy outside. That's what we're going to do.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Kevin, and have a great week. It was great chatting to you.
Chat to you later.
Okay,
cheers, bye.